throwing my hoe on the ground in anger. Roberto cleared his throat, wiped his eyes with his shirt sleeve, and said, "I am going to see Mr. Sims after school on Monday. Maybe he can suggest something else." He picked up his hoe and handed it to me. "Don't lose faith, Panchito," he said, putting his arm around me. "Things will work out." Monday morning my mind was not on school. I kept worrying about Papa and thinking about Roberto. I hope he gets a job, I thought, but what if he doesn't? No, he will, I said to myself. To make things worse, that afternoon Miss Ellis gave our class an assignment I was not expecting. "I am passing out an important part of the Declaration of Independence that I want you to memorize," she said, counting the number of words to hand out in each row. Sheets to hand out in each row. Her announcement evoked a series of moans and groans from the class. "Now there is no need for that," she said, smiling. "The part I want you to know by heart is very short." Once everyone had the sheet of paper, she read the first few lines to the class. "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among them, those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. You see, it's not difficult. You can recite it to me independently or for extra credit in front of the class." We were to let her know when our preference would be the following week. For me, there was only one choice. It was to recite it to her privately. I did not want to go in front of her desk and risk being laughed at because of my Mexican pronunciation. I knew I had a thick accent, not because I heard it myself, but because sometimes kids made fun of me when I spoke English. I could not take a chance on this happening in front of the whole class, even though I wanted to get the extra credit. That afternoon after school, I took the bus home. On the way, I tried to memorize the lines of the Declaration of Independence, but I had trouble concentrating. I was wondering what Mr. Sims had told Roberto. When I got home and saw La Cucaracha, I knew that Roberto was already there. I rushed in. Papa, Mama, and Roberto were sitting at the kitchen table. "What happened? Tell me," I said excitedly. "What do you think?" Roberto asked, trying to conceal his smile. I glanced at Papa and Mama. They were beaming. "You got a job," I cried out. "Yes, Mr. Sims offered me the janitorial job at Main Street School," he answered, grinning from ear to ear. "It's a year-round job," Mama said, looking at Papa. Being careful with his back, Papa stood up slowly and hugged her gently. He then turned to Roberto and said, "Education pays off, mi hijo. I am proud of you. Too bad Mama and I didn't have the opportunity to go to school." "But you've taught us a lot, Papa," I answered. I had not seen Papa that happy in weeks. After supper, I sat at the table to do my homework. I was so excited about Roberto's job that it was difficult to focus. But I was determined to memorize the lines from the Declaration of Independence and to recite them perfectly without forgetting a single word. I took the text and broke it down line by line. I looked up the words for which I did not know: self-evident, endowed, inalienable, and pursuit. I added them to the English words I kept in my new black pocket notepad. I had gotten into the habit of writing down a different English word and its definition every day and memorizing it. After I looked up the meaning of the words, I wrote the entire sentence in my notepad in tiny letters. "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." I went over that first line many times until I memorized it. My plan was to memorize at least one line a day so I could recite it on Friday of the following week. On Wednesday after school, Roberto drove me to El Camino Junior High to pick me up so I could help him clean Main Street School. It was starting to rain. When we arrived at the school, we headed to the basement to the janitor's closet to get out the cleaning cart. It held a large cloth trash bag, a dust broom, a sponge, and toilet supplies. As we entered the first classroom we were to clean, it brought back memories. It was the same room I had been in first grade when I had Mrs. Scalapino. Everything looked the same except the desks and chairs seemed a lot smaller. I sat down at the teacher's desk, took out my pocket Pat, and began to read the second and third sentence I needed to memorize. That they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among them, those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I went over to the cart and picked up the wet sponge and began wiping the blackboard. I recited the lines in my head. Thunder and lightning interrupted my concentration. I looked out the window. It was pouring rain. Through the reflection of the window pane, I could see Roberto behind me, dust mopping the floor. By Friday, I had memorized the introductory lines of the Declaration of Independence and could recite them with relative ease. Only the word inalienable caused me problems. I had trouble saying it, so I broke it into syllables and repeated each sound slowly, following the whole word. On the way home from school, I took the black notepad from my shirt pocket, closed my eyes, and practiced saying inalienable silently to myself. The kid sitting next to me gave me a puzzled look and said, "Are you trying to say something?" His question took me by surprise. "No," I answered. "Why do you ask?" "Well, you keep moving your lips." A bit embarrassed, I told him what I was doing. I don't think he believed me because he stared at the notepad I was holding in my hands, mumbled, and changed seats. The school day started out just right. In the morning, Mr. Myler returned the math exams to our class and asked us to rearrange our seats according to our scores. I sat on the first seat in the front row. This was definitely a good sign. I even looked forward to my recitation to Miss Elo's class that afternoon. At 1 o'clock, right after lunch, I was the first one in Miss Ellis's classroom. I sat on the front desk going over the recitation one last time. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, among those life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I checked the text, my notepad, to make sure I had not forgotten anything. It was perfect. Feeling confident, I placed the notepad inside my desk and waited for class to start. After the bell rang and everyone was seated, Miss Ellis began to take roll. She was interrupted by a knock on the door. When she opened it, I could see Mr. Denevi, the principal, and a man standing beside him. The instant I saw the green uniform, I panicked. I wanted to run, but my legs would not move. I began to tremble and could feel my heart pounding against my chest, although it wanted to start to escape, too. Miss Ellis and the immigration officer walked up to me. Putting her right hand on my shoulder and looking at the officer, she said sadly, "This is him." My eyes clouded. I stood up and followed the immigration officer out of the classroom into his car marked Border Patrol. I sat in the front seat as the officer drove me from Broadway to Santa Maria High School to pick up Roberto.